Damn it. Alright. So, you have the original combat. You just have your standard combo, in which Sora attacks. But you also have the square button. When you press the square button, Sora will launch enemies up into the air. This is an additional branch of combat that allows the player to control enemies up in the air. You have abilities, special moves that add to the base combat by spending ability points. Your ability points increase through leveling and through AP boosts. And you do have a counterattack in this game, in which if you attack directly after blocking, you... Where is it? Vicinity break? No. Guard break. No. Where is it? Where is it? Is it actually called counterattack? I can't remember. Counter guard, there it is. So the counterattack in this game is called counter guard. So if you attack while you're guarding or blocking, you will do a counterattack. I don't think it, okay. So drive forms. Drive forms are form changes, basically, like how Birth by Sleep has form changes. They're upgrades to the base combat and movement that prioritizes certain abilities. So, for example, Valor form, Valor form prioritizes strength. Wisdom form prioritizes magic. Limit form gives a balance to Sora's stats, but also allows him to use abilities from Kingdom Hearts 1. Master form is also a balanced strength and magic boost. And then there's Final Form, which I don't have unlocked on this save, which also again is another balanced power up, but it is your ultimate form. It's Final Form. So the different drive forms are either acquired through the main story or unlocked. Especially, I guess I should mention anti-form. Anti-form, an additional drive form that if you reach a certain threshold, I believe it's like 13 something. Every time you enter a drive form, you gain a point. Once you get 13 points, you go into anti-form instead of your drive form that you wanted. Anti-form acts as a... Not exactly sure how to describe it. Anti-form prioritizes strength. Sora cannot use magic. Sora cannot use items. Sora is consumed by darkness and is attacking enemies like a madman. It is very powerful, but also very dangerous. How each of these drive forms level. So for Valor, they're different. So for Valor form, you gain a point for each attack dealt to an enemy. For Wisdom, it's for every Heartless defeated. For Limit, it's every Limit command finishing move. For Master, it's every Drive Orb you collect. For Final Form, it's every Nobody you defeat. When you level up these drive forms, you do get additional abilities to your forms and to the base combat. So for example, you level up Valor form, you get high jumps, which is great. These drive forms may or may not add additional keyblades depending on the form. And you cannot use the form if your drive gauge is a little too low. These are depleted through use, so while you're in a form, your drive gauge will deplete, but they can be recovered through items and abilities. Magic. Standard magic, same from Kingdom Hearts 1, you get a set amount of magic. The upgrades are gained through the story or certain objectives, but the main difference in this game is that once you deplete magic, the magic will recharge over time. You don't have to hit enemies or do anything special. You can use ethers to replenish, but this will automatically recharge. Alright. Keyblades, standard keyblades, again, they're acquired through main story and certain objectives. They offer certain extra abilities on top of adding to the base character stat. Synthesis, the same, create special items, armors, or weapons by bringing the correct amount of materials. The armor, there are special items that add to players' base stats and may offer special abilities, same with accessories. You have your summons, which are, you summon a Disney character to aid you in battle with special moves. In this game, they're acquired through charms, not summon gems like the first game. So, there are reaction commands in this game, which are basically their quick time events. They're triggered by certain enemy moves. So if you're in a boss battle and you're about to get thrown into the wall by the Dark Thorn in Beast Castle, you can press triangle to actually turn Sora around and do a really awesome counterattack. Unlike most QuickTime events of around this era of games, not a lot of the reaction commands are required for progression. There are some of them that are required. For example, the final boss of this game, where you are pressing triangle and X for quite a long period of time to dodge lasers. Limit commands. I guess I should. Limit commands are team attacks that can be triggered as long as the appropriate party member is in the party and that the player has magic. So if you're trying to do Sora and Riku's combo and you don't have magic, you can't do it. Session. So it's just kind of a special attack. It's pretty cool, very cinematic. Stop. And then of course we have the gummy ship in this game. So this iteration of the gummy ship is a lot more obviously an on-rails shooter than the Kingdom Hearts 1 iteration is, where so you're just flying through specific paths, taking out enemies on all sides. So, just as Days' tutorial was clearly a tutorial with world building, Kingdom Hearts 2 is a tutorial with stakes building. So the tutorial stretched out through Roxas's final 7 days, with the building up of stakes leading to Sora's awakening. The nobodies start to invade the data world more frequently. Roxas begins to learn more about Sora. But what's really interesting is that the 7 days of Roxas's summer vacation is that they kind of feel like organization missions, which is actually a really nice transition. So, for example, on the first day, you investigate the picture thief. You go out and do some recon to figure out who the picture thief is, and then you beat the shit out of Cypher. And in an additional day, you earn some money. Then there's the struggle tournament. These are all kind of like framed like organization missions. So the level design era for Kingdom Hearts 2 is Kingdom Hearts 2. There are wide levels that prioritize combat. The only real challenge in navigation is tied to movement abilities gained through drive forms. There's stickers around, and of course there's the Cavern of Remembrance, which is entirely reliant upon the upgraded movement abilities that you get through drive forms. And for the most part, environmental interactions really only happen through reaction commands. So as I mentioned in Beast Castle, you do a lot of environmental interaction through the boss fights in the first world visit, where you're jumping on top of the Heartless to slam down a chandelier on it. Halloween Town is actually a major outlier in this game. In Halloween Town Square, you can hit the guillotine in the Fountain Square, step over the grates in order to activate little environmental hazards that can be used to hurt you or the Heartless. Alrighty. Now, overall thoughts, Kingdom Hearts 2. Hopefully I can get through coded. Alright. So, Kingdom Hearts 2 has a major emphasis on flashy combat, and this influences the level design and how cinematic the game is. So almost all levels are wide rooms that grant the player enough space to explore the combat options, unlike Kingdom Hearts 1 where these spaces were smaller and they were compact and with more environmental interactions. There are some levels like the Cavern of Remembrance in Halloween Town, which I've mentioned, they do have environmental interactions and they are more tailored toward navigation, but that's few and far between in this game. Most interactions are in bosses and they're tied to combat through reaction commands, which, as I've shown, these are more cinematic, powerful moves. The emphasis of the combat makes these levels feel like set pieces, but they're not annoying or tedious to navigate like they are in Birth by Sleep. That being said, these levels aren't boring, so this is the first iteration of the Kingdom Hearts 2 style of level design, and it works great for this game because you have the reaction command. Whoa, Riku's chest. Whoops. There's nothing in there, Riku, you're a heartless. What was I saying? Right, so the KH2 style of level design isn't boring in this game because of the environmental interactions through the reaction commands, and some destructibles like Nagraba or something. But in future games, they lose this to prioritize different types of combat styles that don't really interact with the world. So it's boring in other games, but not so much here. So the combat evolves from Kingdom Hearts 1 in this game into Kingdom Hearts 2 very well with the automatic recharge, the square button combo, and the drive forms. These are this game's attempt at depth of combat and a little bit of customization, and it does it very well. So what this does, it gives the player more freedom to experiment what combat style they prefer. Like, so you could always just do a ground combo. You can try to do an aerial combo all the time, or you can try to do a combo, or try to do a combination of a ground combo and an aerial combo by transitioning into the square button branch. And even though these branches aren't particularly that diverse, the drive forms and the magic recharge, I mean, let's see. Sorry, before I get into that. Sorry. So again, also you have the drive commands, which you can always use whatever drive form that you particularly prefer. Limit form's always good. If you want to prioritize magic, you can go into Master of Wisdom. So there's a little bit of customization there, and of course you have your preferred magic options. Now, while there, as games are, there's always something that will be broken or something that's a little bit more optimized. There's still a little bit of customization here, and though it's not much, even though it's not diverse, the recharge on the magic and the ability you get later on with recharging the drive gauge while your magic is recharging, it means that the players aren't really punished for using any of these systems, unlike for example Kingdom Hearts 1's magic system, where if you're trying to use any other magic besides Cure or Arrow, you're gonna have a bad time. Just because it just takes so long to get your magic back up to where it's usable again. Kingdom Hearts 2 is praised for its combat, and for good reason. It still holds up very well today. It is a great example of a combat system that is easy to use, difficult to master. So while you can get by pressing X or triangle the whole time, like, just I mean, a lot of people do that. I'll still do that even though I know about these other options. So you can get by on just pressing X and triangle. The recharge system and the level design, that you can further experiment with the gameplay. No, you didn't miss it all. I'm going through KH2 right now. I did just go through Common Days, though. I'm a little bit tired. Once I get through KH2 and coded, I will stop. Hi, Teal. I've also been dropped a couple times. I don't know why. Twitch keeps stopping. So again, easy to use, difficult to master. So the main reward for learning to master the combat is that you just look cool, which is a really interesting reward. Like, unlike in KH1, if you realize that, oh hey, I can fly to this specific area, you get a treasure chest. There's something similar to that for this game, for like, oh, I can use glide to get to this particular sticker, or get across this particular area in the Cavern of Remembrance. The main reward is that if you learn to master this combat system, you look cool as hell. And that works. It's so interesting how it works. You're not rewarded with items, you're rewarded with looking cool. And it's a really interesting reward system that's not actually a system. Alright, so that's mainly like the combat and the level design. So the story and the stakes for this game. Coming back to this game after having played through Kingdom Hearts 3 and all these other games, coming back to this game is so weird. So the main change to how this game feels, knowing what happens in the future of the series, is that this game feels appropriately aimless. So after Days and the prologue where you're playing as Roxas, you have this great emotional build up to Roxas trying to find out who he is, and then he finally figures out who he is, but he can't really step into the spotlight because he has to step aside for Sora to awaken. But when Sora wakes up, even though we as the player know that the organization wants Kingdom Hearts and they've wanted to use Sora's power, now that Sora's out of the organization's reach and Kingdom Hearts isn't complete, there's this vague now what feeling that kind of just perpetuates throughout the entire game. And it's not a bad thing. So the overarching plot of this game is to find Riku and the king, but there's literally no clue to their whereabouts. So Sora, Donald, and Goofy just kind of go wherever. They go to whatever world they can get to and just try to deal with whatever comes their way. And what this creates is this very strange, bittersweet feeling that they're just kind of passing through. I mean, you're involved more in the Disney characters' stories, more so than you were in the first game. But it kind of feels like you're playing through an episode of a Disney Channel TV show or something. You're just kind of there. You're not really making any sort of headway on finding Riku or the king, or learning what the organization's goal is. There is an emphasis on Maleficent and Pete and their Heartless Army in the first half of the game, which is really cool because I never really noticed it at first, that how much Pete and Maleficent are more included in the later portions of the first half of the game. They get more involved in every world. You see them in almost every world. And then they, once their story's up, once the showdown at Hollow Bastion happens, and Sora's taken out the Heartless Army, and Maleficent hasn't succeeded in taking over Hollow Bastion again, she kind of has to step aside And what this does is this allows the organization members to come in, and they're the ones you deal with for the second visit. But like as I said, you're just kind of, the first half of the game is just kind of going around just like, alright, I guess we need to find Riku and the king and stop the organization, but how the fuck are we going to do that? And again, it's appropriately aimless, but direction comes in the form of Kairi's kidnapping. So I could get in. Kairi, my sweet Kairi, you've been done so dirty. So Kairi's kidnapping is interesting how it provides this direction. So Axel's completely independent kidnapping of Kairi puts Sora in the organization's path, because now Sora thinks the only way to find Kairi, the only way to get to the organization, is through the realm of darkness, because, I mean, where else is he gonna look at this point? He's searched every world that he can get to in the realm of light. But trying to get this information starts a chain of events that ends up revealing the organization's goal. Sorry, need more water. As I get tired, I'm getting more shaky. Or more excited, who knows. So we start off with unlocking the data space in Space Paranoids. Now, what this does is it grants Sora and the Hollow Bastion crew access to Ansem the Wise's data, which is great. Sora can find a way into the realm of darkness. But what this also does is that this allows the Master Control Program to gain access to Hollow Bastion's security system, which it then abuses. And what I never figured out until this playthrough is that the MCP fucking with the town, it opens up an opportunity for Maleficent to invade with her Heartless army. So I always felt that Maleficent's attack felt out of the blue, but I realized now that she was taking advantage of a weakness in the security system. And Maleficent actually almost makes it. She gets to just the outside of Ansem the Wise's computer room. And what this does is it just kind of reveals this fragility of Hollow Bastion. Like, if we lose Hollow Bastion, we lose a major world, a major stepping stone in preparing the Realm of Light after what happened, after what Ansem did in Kingdom Hearts 1. So obviously we have to stop Maleficent, right? We have to stop Maleficent and her Heartless, but what this does, this allows the organization to gather more hearts from Sora's Keyblade. And when it's revealed to Sora that the organization has been stealing the hearts of people, he's stealing the hearts that Sora has set free, this puts him in this, like, massive dilemma. Where Sora has to stop the organization, but try not to defeat Heartless to help them get Kingdom Hearts. It's so interesting. So, going up to the showdown at Hollow Bastion, it's just so much more interesting. Like I said, it reveals how fragile Hollow Bastion is. There's a fine line between peace and chaos, and who knows what Maleficent would have been able to do if she had conquered Hollow Bastion for a second time. It gives the world much more weight in the grand scheme. And with Pete and Maleficent, because in Days we see as Roxas Pete growing this Heartless army, what this does, between seeing Pete grow the Heartless army in Days and seeing the ramped up involvement of him and Maleficent in the first half of Kingdom Hearts 2, it really does help make this invasion seem more natural. And it also explains their disappearance until the end of the game, because they, as I said, they need to regroup. Sora just took out their entire fucking army, and they made no headway. But what this also does is that the showdown at Hollow Bastion and all the worlds after it shifts the player's view of the organization. So knowing since the very beginning of Days that the organization wants Kingdom Hearts to get their hearts back, this puts the player at odds with Sora's viewpoint, right? Because we know it's like, oh, they just want to get their hearts back. But as I mentioned through Days, we learned that the organization is controlling the heartless population in each world. So they're kind of trying to play, I'm not exactly saying like playing God, but they determine how many heartless are appropriate for a world and make sure that the heartless are there at that level so that more hearts can be swallowed and the heartless can be destroyed by Roxas so they can gather enough hearts to get Kingdom Hearts. But where the player's view then shifts to align with Sora's is that after the showdown at Hollow Bastion, where Sora defeats Maleficent's massive fucking army of Heartless, the organization becomes emboldened, because even though Sora knows that defeating Heartless helps the organization, Sora can't stop helping people, because otherwise the Heartless are going to hurt people, right? So now we see the organization is sending out Heartless, these monstrous Heartless, for Sora to defeat, and now they're holding Kairi hostage somewhere to fuel Sora's anger. It turns the player's viewpoint from this kind of pity to this actual, in my opinion, righteous anger. They've hurt way too many people. They don't deserve hearts. They don't deserve to get back what they have thrown away. And this is where the viewpoint of the player kind of aligns with Sora's. So, now this is all well and good, but we have a major issue with Kingdom Hearts 2. And I've felt this since the first time I played it. There's a pacing issue with the story, which is funny considering the pacing issue with Kingdom Hearts 3. So, out of all the games in the series, Kingdom Hearts 2 is the outlier. It is the only... Days has multiple visits, but Kingdom Hearts 2 is the only one where you go through the worlds in like 2 rounds. So, the pacing issue comes in is that the next logical step after the showdown of Hollow Bastion is to find the world that never was, right? Sora doesn't know how to get to it. But Riku gives Sora an explicit clue to go to the mansion. It gives the player an explicit clue to go to the mansion in Twilight Town. But if you go there after going into Hollow Bastion, after going through Hollow Bastion, nothing happens. And to me that's really frustrating because I know I need to go to Twilight Town. The game is telling me to go to Twilight Town, but going to Twilight Town does not progress the story. So, now I understand that the Disney stories need to be finished, but knowing that you have to go to the mansion anyway, and that you're just tying up loose ends, for some reason, is a little frustrating. So, I don't understand why they didn't give us the picture telling us to go to the old mansion until like later in the game, because what this does, this turns Kingdom Hearts 2's aimlessness from good to bad, because now it's like, okay, we gotta find the world that never was. I have this picture telling me to go to the old mansion. Oh, I guess we should just check every other world just in case. So it's a little frustrating. But something that I've done this time around that I've never done before is that I've played the second set of worlds out of order in the hopes that I could turn the aimlessness back to an advantage. So, when you finish Hollow Bastion, you have access to the Caribbean, or Port Royal, Beast Castle, in the Land of Dragons. So, and Atlantica. So if you wanted, you could just go straight to Port Royal. You can do that and face the story, the ending story there, and unlock the rest of the worlds. So that's what I did. I played these worlds out of order, and it kind of worked. So the aimlessness did kind of turn back to an advantage, mainly because it highlighted fatigue within Sora. So very much we see Sora getting really frustrated and tired in the second visits of worlds, because he's like, I still need to find Riku, I still need to find the king, I need to finish the organization's world so I can find Kairi. And it also gives more time between Roxas's attempt at facing the organization and Sora's attempt at facing the organization. There's room to breathe, but it's almost a little too much. At this point, when you finally get to the world that never was, I'm focused more on the Destiny Trio's reunion, and not so much everything else that has kind of happened on the way there. Like, I'm so happy that Sora, Riku, and Kairi have been reunited, and that we've reunited with the king and all this. But it's been now such a long time since Shion's sacrifice, or everything that's happened with Vantera and Aqua. There's a little too much room. There's a little too much breathing room in between this. So, regardless, the aimlessness is that I feel for this game now. It works, but only to a certain extent. Then of course the ending to this series, the ending to this game is the best in the series, hands down. The ending of Kingdom Hearts 2 is the best fucking ending in the entire series. I love it so much, because like, despite the sadness of losing Axel and Xion and Roxas and Naminé no longer being their own people, it's still one of the happiest endings. Like, Roxas, Xion, and Naminé are together because they rejoined with Sora and Kairi. Axel, like, banished knowing he sacrificed himself for his best friend. And we defeat Xemnas, who towards the end becomes like very hell-bent on getting what he wants, no matter who he hurts. We have these like little victories, and then we have Sora's homecoming. We see Sora just so happy to finally make it back to the islands. It's so great, it's so happy. And these loose ends, quote unquote, with Axel and Xion and the Wayfinder trio, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't feel like it matters because everything falls into place, and the player can end their journey satisfied. And then we have Coded. Alright, that's KH2. Gonna do Coded, and then I'll be done, at least for tonight. I hope you're enjoying this so far. I'll have these up on YouTube, like, all in one, like, massive playlist. The stream's cut out a couple times. I don't feel like editing. I'm just gonna put it all in one stupid playlist. Alright. Okay. So. Coded. Oh, Coded. So. With Coded, we return back. If you want, I can splice it together. I'll see how it all looks uploaded on YouTube. If it's really that big of a deal, I mean, this is as low maintenance as I'm trying it to be. I'm just trying to get this shit out there so that I can start letting Unreal. Alright. Appreciate the offer though. So, with Coded, back to the gameplay mechanics, we are back to the command menu. So the command melding in this game works a little bit differently than Birth by Sleep. You still combine commands to create new ones, but you can also level up commands by combining them. What's really, really nice in this game is that if you are trying to meld a new command and you're looking at the list, if there's any yellow commands, if any commands appear as yellow, that means that if you combine it with the first command, if it's not yellow, it will just level up the first command. And oh my god, I love that little detail, because in Birth by Sleep, it felt like a crapshoot. It's like, I used a guide for Birth by Sleep for all the command melding. I didn't use a guide for this game because I saw, oh, I can just see what this one makes and whether I want it or not. And oh, this yellow one means I'll get a new one. It's just a nice little quality of life change. What's also really nice is that a new command, or the new level of that command, it will not be completely melded until you confirm to level up that command or combine or meld the new command. So if you play through with this new command and you decide you don't like it, son of a bitch. Alright. Wait, can I go to the title screen? I can. So if you decide that you don't like that new command, you can just still have your original 2 that you were using, which is really nice. Another nice quality of life change. There is a little bit of a percentage aspect of it. You have like a luck percentage of getting an extra perk to the command, but nothing that's going to transform your command into something else you don't want. Or maybe something you do want, and it's got like a 4% chance of you getting it. So, the stat matrix. So it's kind of like, it's a branching skill tree that unlocks abilities, commands, armor slots, and enhances the base stats by inserting chips. So it's kind of like if you're playing like Final Fantasy X, that skill tree, or Child of Light skill tree. It's just a skill tree, which is, I think, the only skill tree in this. Yeah. Well, no. I guess Dream Eaters count as skill trees. Anyway. So you have finished commands. They're the final, more powerful moves to end a combo with. Let's see. I would play the music in the background, but I don't want to get bod muted by playing simple and clean. So for the finished commands, they are built up through the use of combos, or commands rather, in your base combat as they are in Birth by Sleep. Your Keyblades. They are acquired through the main story and certain objectives. They offer certain abilities on top of adding to the base character's stats. Like in Days, these Keyblades will change Sora's base combo style, but these Keyblades also have their own skill tree that adds to Sora's base combo as he attacks. So, as Sora attacks enemies, once he meets a certain threshold, he'll get to a new part in the skill tree of that Keyblade, which may add freezing an enemy when you attack, or may just take you directly to a finish command. These eventually go down once you're no longer in combat. But the Keyblades themselves do level through use. Let's go to the characters, I guess. Yeah, the Keyblades are leveled through use. You just attack enemies and you level up with them. Armor, there's armor in this game. The special items that add to the player's base stats and may offer extra abilities. So there's a lot of other gameplay elements that are added to Coded. Coded tries to change up the gameplay style a lot. So, these happen in keyholes. These are areas of the main These are areas of the game where the main gameplay style changes. We've got a 2D side-scroller, so where you progress through 3 stages of a 2D side-scroller to the boss. There are magic crystals throughout the side-scrolling levels where you collect it, and it's the only way that you get to use magic. So you can only hold 1 crystal at a time, and it does have a limited use. You can't use magic any other way, so if you need to heal, tough luck. There's a wave shooter. Once again, you progress through 3 stages to the boss. It also has magic crystals. This is what this is. You're just kind of going through like a wave shooter where there's these different heartless appearing in front of you, and your keyblade turns into a little shooty magic thing. Shooty magic thing. Nice. There's a turn-based RPG. This only appears for 1 world. So progress. So you have to progress through a certain amount of floors to the boss. So what this does, this gives you a specialized command deck for the field and the battle. So in the field, you collect commands that in the field itself that have perks in field and battle. So for example, you could lower the amount of heartless that are in a particular room, or you can, once you're in battle, you can use something that powers up your commands or something. So in battle, your commands from your regular deck turn into a certain element or physical attacks. And you can combine these commands to get a special command, and you can have items, which is really nice. There's a reflex element to this turn-based RPG. So when you're attacking with the base combo, you can add up to 2 extra attacks by pressing the attack button at the right time, and it will give you a prompt. Same thing can happen with the block. You can press the block by pressing block at a certain time. And each character has a limit attack, so it's the super move that triggers when a character has done enough attacks. Then there are boss fights, which are just straight up boss fights. Mainly just modified versions of Kingdom Hearts 1 boss fights. Some additional gameplay changes that are just very, very world specific. There's frozen time. So there's time... These additional gameplay changes happen outside of the keyhole, I should mention. So frozen time, there's time in one section of the level is frozen, and you need to find the source of that frozen time, or you need to collect some time drops to prevent losing more time. There's the team attacks. This is where Sora cannot use the Keyblade and must rely on Donald and Goofy to attack Heartless and destroy blocks. They do have a finish command together, though. There's low strength. This happens in Riku's Datascape, where you have to get strength orbs to regain your overall strength. And there's the card endings in Castle Oblivion. So doing world events in a certain order or in a certain time will grant you different endings. Which is really cool and adds something that kind of puts the player at odds with Sora, which is really interesting. There's system sectors. These are levels with challenges or bosses that are causing glitches in the level, and the player has to clear the sector to get rid of the bugs and the glitches. Now, at a certain point in the game, you are introduced to the anti-system, so you have to anti-system sector points against a percentage. So if you complete the challenge of that floor, you will gain back your points with that percentage interest. If you don't complete that challenge, you lose all those points that you had anteed. You can cash in those points at the end before you leave the system sector for prizes. Now these are required by the story, but it does have some. The system sectors, I should say, are required by the story, but they do have post-game and revisit expansions, which is pretty cool. And then I have platforming. Bad. This Coded brought back the platforming that Kingdom Hearts 1 tried to do, and just like Kingdom Hearts 1, the platforming for Coded is not good. Platforming is not the strength of a Kingdom Hearts game. Now, before I get to the tutorial, the level design era, and my overall thoughts, I will be right back. Yo, this kid's smart as fuck. Thank you, Jalen, TT. I literally went to college for this, so I hope I sound smart. Alrighty. So, the tutorial... So, the tutorial for Coded is very clearly a tutorial that is incredibly front-loaded. So, what this tries to do, it tries to redo the Station of Awakening tutorial from Kingdom Hearts 1, but it lacks any of the mystery that the first game had. All it kind of does is just kind of bombards you with info about the command deck and the Keyblade skill tree and the finish commands. This does bleed into Destiny Islands a little bit, as KH2 does as well, to introduce the blocks, and, you know, introduces the platforming aspect. But again, this is all very incredibly front-loaded, so that by the time you get to explore the island, for me, I just kind of forgot everything that the damn tutorial taught me, because it was such an overload of information. And the tutorial bleeding into Destiny Islands to introduce the blocks is a little bit weak on my end. I'm not exactly sure if that really is a tutorial, because each world introduces a different type of block. So... the KH2 it was, but hey, to each their own. So the level design era for Coded, at first I wasn't sure areas for prioritized combat. I can get through Kingdom Hearts 1's platforming, but it's not, I would disagree with you, Teal. I don't think there's a hidden gem within Kingdom Hearts 1's platforming, but hey, again, to each their own. If you enjoy it, I'm glad you enjoy it. But we can all agree the camera in Deep Jungle is ass. Alright, bye. Thank Jalen, thanks for being here. Alright, so... again, so Coded has these wide levels to prioritize that allow... Oh, Coded being a gem. Oh, wait till you get to Hollow Bastion. Wait till you get to Hollow Bastion. How far are you? Coded is definitely, like, better than Kingdom Hearts 1's, but there's definitely, like, issues. Like, my hands hurt. Finished Wonderland. Okay, yeah, wait till you get to Hollow Bastion. So... I muted you when you talked about the world stuff. Well, you're probably gonna have to mute for the rest of this because that's kind of a lot what the rest of this is. Sorry. You might have to go, Teal. I'm gonna be talking about spoilers for the rest of this, gameplay stuff-wise, so, but again, so, even though there's wide areas like KH2, the levels are a little bit taller, so again, this is kind of, you're going through the same Kingdom Hearts 1 worlds, almost the exact same Kingdom Hearts 1 worlds that you went through in Days and Calm. Exploration is encouraged through blocks that are placed in the level, and there are platforming challenges. They don't particularly feel like either KH2 levels or KH1 or 3D era style levels. They feel more like cluttered KH2 levels. They try to do some interesting platforming challenges and navigation challenges, excuse me, but it just more feels like the level is just kind of a cluttered KH2 level where you have these wide areas to explore, but also you've got these fucking blocks in the way that is just really annoying to navigate. Sometimes. Alright, so here's the overall thoughts. Teal, you may have to mute or leave. So what Coded, the entire point of Coded is to explain what is in Mickey's letter. So Coded is KH2's epilogue. It ties up the loose ends of Mickey's letter, and it kind of bring back to the surface the fate of those connected to Sora, the Wayfinder trio and the Sea Salt trio. So what I did is I progressed through this game and then I watched the Birth by Sleep secret ending. And so what this does story-wise and stakes-wise is that when you progress through the game and then watch blank points, it feels like Sora's personal journey of finding his friends has come to a close, and it feels like we are at the final confrontation of dealing with Master Xehanort, and at least beginning to deal with Master Xehanort. Coded foreshadows the real Organization 13, and it also introduces the hurt inside of Sora, and it sets Maleficent on the path to find the Book of Prophecies. But that is mainly just kind of towards like the end game and in blank points, so in order to get to that feeling, we have to get through the main chunk of the game. So what I appreciate about Coded is that it's constantly changing its combat and level design in order to showcase how the bugs have taken over Jiminy's journal. The main structure of a world is enter the world, bugs appear, there's a system sector, there's some plots, another system sector, more plots, enter the keyhole, and then deal with the boss. There's a little bit of variation within there, but it's like the basic structure. The gameplay and the level design sections are affected by glitches in system sectors and keyholes. The glitches are temporary and they usually result in a fairly minor change in the level design, such as the speed of the card soldiers or the lack of a door in some worlds, which is really cool to tie that level design change into some gameplay. The keyholes are major stages where the level design and the gameplay are changed to specific gameplay styles. There are some outlier worlds where the entire level is modified by something different than a glitch or a keyhole, such as Hollow Bastion or Agrabah. But, you know, despite some issues that I have with the platforming and particular glitch, or sorry, not glitches, just sections in general, I feel like these gameplay changes do keep the gameplay fresh. The command melding in this game is so much better in my opinion than Birth by Sleep. there's less of an unknown factor when it comes to melding, as I've mentioned. You know which commands will give you a new one, and you don't have to commit to a new command when you try to meld it, which is really cool. There's nice quality of life things, as I mentioned. The balance problem is actually fixed. So the balance problem of you can get these really powerful commands fairly early on in the game, but oh, whoops, you didn't meld a command with Leaf Bracer. Well, you're fucked at the end of the game. That balance problem is fixed by locking certain commands behind story updates and system sectors. So as much as you can try to meld all these commands, there's only certain ones you can only meld so many commands before you have to just kind of wait for the story to progress so that you can have some new commands to meld with. So even though there are some powerful commands that can be melded early, like a heat storm or something, they're not super top tier commands like in Birth by Sleep. And this is just, as I've said, commands required for those simply can't be obtained until certain parts of the story unlock. Despite this restriction, I think this better allows for player choice, as in there isn't an obvious optimal command deck to use, so you're not spamming Magnet all the time to drag all the enemies in and then use Thundaga or something, which again you can do in Kingdom Hearts 2. But there's always an optimization to it. But this game kind of controls that a little bit better. So leveling up Keyblades is always a nice feature. I enjoyed it in Days, I enjoyed it in this game, I enjoy it in Kingdom Hearts 3. But like in Days, the Keyblades, they change Sora's base combo. But they also have a skill tree and they can be leveled, and the Keyblades' abilities in their skill trees are pretty fun to explore. The combination of the Keyblades, the finish commands, and the command deck, I feel like they give the player more freedom to customize their experience than Birth by Sleep did. Birth by Sleep, like Chain of Memories, tries to add a little too much in the hopes of adding depth to the gameplay system, but just kind of ends up putting like a bunch of shit on top of each other, or just spreads it out almost like these are all equal gameplay options, as opposed to here's something with a lot of depth in it. So I think Coded did a really good job of adding depth to the command deck system in a way that Birth by Sleep really didn't. Let's see. So, again with the level design, hard to put in a particular era. These are Kingdom Hearts 1 levels. They're not as wide as the Days versions, but there's still like an emphasis on combat. Exploration is encouraged through the blocks placed in the world that give the player stat chips and items and all these other things, but to me it really seems superficial. So unlike in KH1, where you use that, you get that treasure chest once or whatever, these special blocks, they respawn as kind of like lesser special blocks, and there's really no interaction with the game world beyond these blocks. So again, they just feel like more like KH2 levels that are very constricted. Hollow Bastion and Agrabah, of all places, do feel a little bit better. Agrabah requires familiarization with the town of Agrabah in order to catch Iago before the time runs out, which is really interesting. And Hollow Bastion does the same with some platforming challenges. I would like to point out, though, that I reached my Agrabah limit in KH2. I reached my Agrabah limit in KH2. Like, fucking hell. You can only go to the desert so many times. Now, Coded's story. Let's see. Teal, if you're still... Teal, I don't know if you're listening, but if you're still here, I'm done talking about the gameplay stuff. I'm gonna go into story, so I imagine you don't want to hear that either. Alright, so... As for the main parts of Coded's story, the game likes to bring things up that they seem to be very, very important. And then they just kind of drop those plot points. So, for example, figuring out the message that was left in Jiminy's journal, that gets dropped when the bugs show up, right? The new messages and memories that appear after completing a world and getting rid of the bugs gets dropped when Data Riku shows up. And then the whole concept of clearing the bugs gets dropped after Riku gets kidnapped. So there's just a lot of these, hey, here's this thing, oh shit, something new is happening, we're gonna forget about that thing that we spent like a good chunk of 2 fucking hours on. It's a little frustrating. There are some plot points that get brought up at the end of the game, but it just kind of takes a really long time to get there, and some of the answers don't make sense. Like, the journal itself accessing deeper memories of worlds that don't belong to anyone in the journal, or the Heartless's minds collecting together that somehow are the cause of all the bugs, but then Naminé is also somehow the cause of the bugs. I claim to understand a lot about Kingdom Hearts, and I do understand a lot about Kingdom Hearts, but there's some things that I've never really, some of these answers have never really made sense to me. And then for me, like, the actual point of the whole message that is left in the journal is to see if Sora was ready to deal with the hurt inside of him. But the real Sora doesn't experience this. And Data Sora only really faces this at the final part of the game. So it's a Kingdom Hearts game. It's got its issues. The story's got its issues. This one just drops a lot of plot points, and some things just don't make sense. But there are some really great moments. What I like about this game is that I view Coded as what KH1 would have been like if Riku had not turned against you. We get to see these really, like, cool joking moments between Data Sora and Data Riku, like Sora being, remember that when I'm taller than you, or Riku coming to Sora's aid, and vice versa. It's great. It would have been, again, it gives us a glimpse of how these two would have interacted through KH1 if we hadn't had Riku being jealous plot. We also see Data Sora slowly grow from a kind of very atypical solo protagonist to someone who relies on friends, as the real Sora does, which is really interesting. I personally find Data Sora very annoying, but Data Sora is it reminds me of Sora in Chain of Memories. He's just a little bit too cocky. He's pretty sassy, and he's got this weird kind of little bit of brother complex with Huey, Dewey, and Louie, but he's just a little bit too confident, a little too cocky, and Sora can be a bit of a sass master, and he can get a little in over his head, but Sora isn't that super confident of himself. He's got his issues, and they're not apparent in Data Sora. It's like a memory of him, I guess, which makes sense considering this is Jiminy's journal. But it just makes me just really frustrated to deal with a Sora that kind of runs off on his own and doesn't really want to accept help from friends. It's really weird. Back to the really cool stuff. the battle with Sora's Heartless. My god, do I love this boss fight. So, Coded's boss fights are really cool because they turn the boss fights from KH2 on their heads, like fighting Darkseid for the millionth time in Coded. But there's a little bit of a difference because Darkseid turns into blocks and has these different area of effect attacks. Crimson Prankster, you just kind of chase him around, or something. But all the boss battles are pretty cool. But Sora's Heartless is such a fantastic concept for a boss. And it also adds to the idea that was introduced in Days of Sora being a terrifying villain. It just shows that as powerful as Sora is, we have to remember that if he were to fall to darkness and he had control over that, holy shit, would Sora be a very, very scary boss to face. He's powerful, like Sora's Heartless transforms from Darkseid to Anti-Sora from Kingdom Hearts 1, and then we'll split off into 3 and summon a bunch of Keyblades that come down from the sky like Roxas does, and with his balls of light in his fight in KH2, and he ends up draining Data Sora of his strength and data as well, and it's with the final battle music from KH1 playing in the background. It's so cool. I could go on and on, but and then finally, my favorite part of this game is the hurt plot, and how we see this interesting confrontation between Data Sora and Data Roxas. So the hurt plot is interesting because it's the test of Sora's character, of who Sora is, and if he really is as nauseatingly pure as he seems to be. So Data Sora is essentially given a playground to mess with people, and is given the opportunity to hurt the illusions inside Castle Oblivion. And there's an incentive given to the player to mess around in these card worlds through the use of ending cards. And so what this does is this draws a line between Sora and the player in a different way than what Calm does. So once again, Chain of Memories draws a strange line between the player and Riku. The player's reward for mastering the combat is to enter dark mode, but Riku doesn't want to use the darkness inside of him. The player can be rewarded. The player's rewarded by just kind of playing around with the characters that we've experienced from KH1 in a different way that could potentially cause them harm. And the player's rewarded for that, but that puts the player at odds with Sora, because Sora wouldn't do that. He would never emotionally abuse people. And unlike the player, Sora has to deal with these actions and the hurt that's left inside of him from seeing these people and then forgetting about them. So no matter what the player does, even if they even if they mess with people, even if they don't, Sora's the one who eventually hurts, which is always so interesting. And then you have Roxas. Data Roxas is Sora's other side. He's not exactly representative of the darkness inside Sora, but he's just kind of a different side to Sora's character. And Roxas plays devil's advocate for this world. He's the one who tempts Sora into, hey, maybe, these illusions, they don't feel anything. You don't really have to, just you don't have to follow the script. You can fuck with people if you want. And because Roxas has experienced so much hurt in his very short life, when Data Sora accepts the hurt, accepts the fairly minimal hurt that he's experienced from Castle Oblivion, this rightfully enrages Roxas, because Roxas has experienced so much pain and so much hurt that he thinks that Sora really can't handle it. And this is why Roxas attacks Sora. It's that final test to see if Sora really can accept the hurt inside of him. And despite this boss fight and, you know, Sora experiencing real hurt, Sora still holds on to this philosophy in this really, really sweet moment between him and Roxas that is a very powerful testament to his character. And this is where Data Sora becomes more like the real Sora. And because the real Sora would absolutely do this, and he fucking summarizes Coded in like 3 seconds at the beginning of Kingdom Hearts 3. With hurting, you know, carrying out a little hurt can't be all that bad. So again, we have these like really, really powerful like moments at the end. It just sucks that the real Sora just doesn't actually experience this. This is all Data Sora. But what this does is that Sora being able to accept this hurt, hold on to it because it means that he's connecting with people. It gives the rest of the lost characters a beacon to follow back to where they are supposed to be. And for that to end the game, for that to be the lesson that Mickey learned, and then we see Aqua in the Realm of Darkness. We see when she hears Sora's name how it shows us every other character: Roxas, Xion, Axel, Naminé, Ven, and Terra. All these people that have been lost, all these people that are connected to Sora. And we see that Sora, no matter what, he's going to go out there and help people. Because it's who he is, no matter how much he personally hurts. It's really cool, and it really builds up Sora as this actual hero, and not just some kid who managed to get the Keyblade by luck. And the one final thing I want to say about Coded is that when I got done playing Coded, I wanted to watch the Coded movie. I did not feel that way about Days. So the Coded movie, first of all, it adds a couple more scenes, some interlude scenes with Mickey and with Donald and Goofy, explaining a little bit more about, hey, why don't we see Leon here? Remember Final Fantasy characters? They exist. But what it also does is it kind of mellows out Data Sora, so Data Sora is less annoying in the movie than he is in actual game. And the sound design of the Coded movie is so great. Like, let's see. Alright, An Unexpected Bond. This is one of my favorite cutscenes of the entire series, because it uses a song that I would never thought they would use, and I'm going to... And I want to play it because I feel it's very important, because I just love this scene, but the despite the weird audio or the lip syncing, Haley Joel Osment and Jesse McCartney do a fantastic job in this scene.
You've used up all the cards, I take it? I would ask if you enjoyed your little trip. But we both know that you've forgotten it. That you're feeling pretty empty.
No, I'm not. I may not remember who I met, but I do remember that I met them. And knowing that I've forgotten them, I miss them.
So you heard. I warned you. Don't you remember what I said? That hurt will drag you down into the darkness. You have to get rid of all of it.
No, I don't. I can keep the hurt because it reminds me of something important. It lets me know that what I've forgotten is crucial. That's enough. I won't run from it. It'll stay inside of my heart until the day I remember.
The darkness will take you first.
If I put the hurt aside, I'll lose my ties to all the people I care about. My mind's made up. I may end up falling into the darkness, but I'll carry this with me. I'll only get rid of it when I remember everything, and not a day sooner than that. I'll keep the hurt with me for the time being. It's all that I have. It's what holds the pieces in place. I accept that.
You say you accept it? It's not a game! It's way past time that you learned what real hurt feels like! Come on, Sora. Do it! Finish me off! Why won't you do it? I get it. You've seen through my disguise. I'm just like everyone else you've encountered in this place. Made of data. I'm not even worth the effort. Is that what it is? Guess there's no point in destroying something if it never existed. Is that right?
Not at all. You say that you're an illusion, but you certainly pack a really big punch. You said that you'd show me hurt, and you weren't wrong. Actually, the hurt that I just felt was more than that. Sure, it might have hurt while we were fighting, but I sensed a different kind of hurt from you. It was kind of like an intense, sharp pain. But it felt sort of familiar. Almost like it was my own. As if we'd been connected. Like right then we shared the same hurt. If somehow it brings me closer to people in that kind of way, then carrying around a little hurt can't be all that bad.
Can't be all that bad. All right, I give up. Here. You pass, Sora. Congratulations, you understand hurt. Now, use this to find the truth.
What do you mean?
My role was to see if you were ready to take ownership of the hurt inside you. And now that role is done. Nothing left for me to do but Go away.
Are you gonna go back home?
I don't know if I really have one. But there's a place I'd like to be.
A place? Where? Oh! What's this feeling? I've got memories that don't belong to me. A place to call home. And a sunset that's comforting. My first and my last
summer vacation.
You can rest easy. I've got you now.
So the use of the piano collections, the Other Promise and Roxas's piano collection songs in this scene is so well done. It's not something I ever expected them to do. The piano collections are fantastic, and the fact that they use this for this very sweet, emotional scene between Sora and Roxas, between somebody who has hurt so much and somebody who is willing to accept the hurt of others. It's just, it adds so much to the emotion. And that's the reason why after playing through Coded, I wanted to watch the Coded movie, because I know that the sound design is so cool. It's so well done that you have these pieces like the piano collections of The Other Promise and Roxas. You have Link to All used when Sora regains the Keyblade. For as scattered as Coded is sometimes, it has its high points. And playing this and then having all these setup scenes between young Xehanort and Xigbar and Maleficent talking about the Book of Prophecies and then blank points, it really all sets up to the beginning and the end. And that is where I'm going to end for tonight. It is midnight. I hopefully this weekend will be able to finish by talking about Dream Drop Distance, Kingdom Hearts 2.9, and Kingdom Hearts 3 proper. Which all encompasses under Kingdom Hearts 3 itself, which I'll go a little bit into when I talk about it. So, thanks for those who have been here to listen to me ramble about Kingdom Hearts game design, level design stuff. I will be doing this again, and these will go up on YouTube once I'm done streaming these. So, thank you for being here, and good night or good morning wherever you are.